This interview from the TV studios of the United Nations headquarters in New York explores recent developments in the continuing efforts of non-governmental organizations to press nuclear weapons states into compliance with their agreements to abolish nuclear weapons. Our guest is Alice Slater, New York director of the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation and founder of the global disarmament organization Abolition 2000. I'm Kevin Sanders, UN NGO representative of World Opinion Forum. Alice Slater, you have been one of the leading figures and continue to lead the disarmament movement for non-governmental organizations around the world. Most recently, the NGOs gathered in Vienna for the Non-Proliferation Treaty Review Conference there. What, if anything, came out of that meeting?
Well, I think we're almost coming to the end of our belief that the Non-Proliferation Treaty Conference can accomplish anything. This was a treaty that was signed in 1970 by 5 nuclear weapon states, the U.S., Russia, China, France, and England, promising to give up their nuclear weapons if the rest of the world promised not to get them. And everybody signed this treaty except for India, Pakistan, and Israel. And they, of course, got nuclear weapons. And then North Korea took this other bargain in the treaty, which was to give everybody peaceful, so-called peaceful nuclear technology, which is literally giving them a bomb in the basement because every nuclear reactor is a potential bomb factory. So North Korea walked out of the treaty. So that's who we have now, these 9 countries. And here it is, you know, this treaty was signed in 75, so it's, 36 years later, and there's still nuclear weapons pointing at each other from the U.S. and Russia. There are like 2,000 weapons on hair trigger alert, ready to go off in minutes. And the governments, while they made commitments in 2000 to work towards the ultimate elimination of nuclear weapons, there's nothing happening. It's very stuck. The good news is that the NGOs are looking for new avenues, and certain governments are stepping forward. And the other thing that's really great, the International Red Cross took a position saying that the use of nuclear weapons violates international law. So we're looking at other legal mechanisms to attack these weapons rather than the Non-Proliferation Treaty, which nobody seems ready to comply with.
How effective is world law as such in dealing with this? For example, the World Court in The Hague has virtually declared nuclear weapons illegal, and yet it has not apparently had any effect at all.
Well, we think it's had an effect because now the Red Cross is picking it up. Things take time. It's like building a coral reef, we're slowly building. I mean, international law is as good as the people that are willing to obey it or what enforcement. It's hard to enforce international law on an issue like nuclear weapons.
Is this sluggish pace toward disarmament adequate in view of the fact that, as you say, there are thousands of weapons on hair trigger alert? Surely this insanity is something that could be corrected within a matter of days. Why has that not happened?
Because I think it's a kind of a world thinking. It's the capitalist system. It's the militarized system. It's not just nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons are like the tip of the spear in the hand of the emperor. Because now we're going into the most frightening kinds of weapons that anybody can get. Nuclear weapons were hard to get, but you have the U.S. leading in drone attacks where we're assassinating people on the ground that we say are terrorists and killing civilians as well. And the President of the United States is the judge, the jury, and the executioner. And anybody can do drones. These are not complicated things to do. They're like toy airplanes, any computer nerd can. And the other thing is, we did this cyber attack on Iranian nuclear enrichment facilities. We gummed up their works with this virus, computer virus, because we're trying to stop Iran from enriching uranium, which, by the way, they're entitled to do under the Non-Proliferation Treaty. So every other country is entitled. Japan's doing it, Brazil is doing it, but we're saying not to Iran. That's why the law is so poor, because you can't have law that's not enforced equally. It's got to apply to everybody or nobody respects the law. But we went and did a cyber attack on their uranium enrichment to slow it down a bit. And anybody can do that. And all our civilian systems are vulnerable. Anybody can do a cyber attack on us. And Russia actually proposed to the U.S. that we do some kind of a treaty to ban cyber war. And the U.S. won't go along with it because we have this arrogant, almost blind belief that we can do anything. Like we were the first to get the bomb, then other people got the bomb. We're starting this drone technology, we're starting cyber warfare, and we think that we're so far ahead of everybody that nobody will catch up to us, and yet we know they're going to catch up to us. So I don't know who's watching the store right now, basically.
We were talking recently with Senator Douglas Roche. He had spoken most enthusiastically about the possibility of change that came with the famous Prague speech by Obama. Obama has not fulfilled some of the expectation that many people had held, but Senator Roche says that one of the problems is that in the political system you can only move as fast as the political traffic will permit. In a second term, if Obama were to get a second term, do you anticipate that there may be changes then?
I think it has to come from the grassroots. It's not going to come from Obama. He made the statement, you know, that we should have a nuclear weapons-free world, and it might not happen in my lifetime. That was his part of his statement. Hillary Clinton misquoted him and said, as the president said, it might not happen in several lifetimes. So that's where the establishment is thinking. Like it's a good idea, and we've seen that even from the old rusty Cold Warriors like Kissinger and Nunn, and there were four of them, Schultz, that wrote this op-ed piece in the Wall Street Journal saying it's time to get rid of nuclear weapons, but they keep backing off from it. It depends what happens with the Congress, because the Republican majority in the House and the badly designed filibuster rule where it's not enough for the Democrats to have a majority in the Senate, they need a supermajority, and they don't have it. They're putting the brakes on. I mean, Obama paid a terribly heavy price for this little START treaty with Russia. I mean, we only cut our arsenals from 10,000, you know, to 2,000 or 2,500. And he had to promise over $84 billion to the weapons labs for new nuclear weapons technology and $100 billion for new delivery systems, airplanes, submarines, and missiles, to get this little START treaty through that wasn't, it was just cutting some of the arsenal. It didn't really move us that far down the road. So he had to make that deal. I don't know what his power will be unless we have a Democratic Congress. And then it's still going to have to come from the grassroots, because I don't know how committed he is right now.
It has been reported that Obama has received a report on possible options for the future with the nuclear arsenal, and one of the proposals is for a cut in the number of nuclear weapons by 80%, presumably with a matching response from Russia. But the fact that such a proposal, fairly dramatic cut of that kind, is even being discussed, does that give you any sort of hope?
Oh, definitely. I think it's wonderful that they're talking about that, because nothing is going to happen with nuclear disarmament until the U.S. and Russia go down to at least, you know, at most 1,000 warheads each, because there are 19,000 nuclear bombs on the planet since the START treaty, or 20,000 of them, and 19,000 are in the U.S. and Russia. So all the other nuclear countries have altogether 1,000, China, England, France, India, Pakistan, North Korea. If the U.S. and Russia don't go down to 1,000 each, the other countries aren't going to deal with them. So once they do that, we can invite everybody to the table and start talking. And this has been a sad history of missed opportunities. Gorbachev offered to Reagan at Reykjavik, let's get rid of nuclear weapons, and Reagan wouldn't give up Star Wars, so Gorbachev backed off. Then Putin offered to Clinton to cut our arsenals to 1,500 or even 1,000 if we would stop planting these missiles in Eastern Europe and expanding our missiles, and Clinton didn't give in on that. And right now we're totally provoking Russia planting missiles in Eastern Europe and even in, you know, Georgia and, you know, former Soviet republics. I mean, how would we feel? Well, we know how we felt when Russia tried to put missiles into Cuba. You know, it created this incredible world crisis, and yet we're provoking them, and we're also provoking China. We're opening new military bases in Australia. We're beefing up our missiles with Japan. And China and Russia have been proposing a treaty to ban these missiles and weapons in space at the Commission on Disarmament in Geneva, and every country in the world votes it except the United States of America, because like Obama and all of us are tied into this incredible military, industrial, congressional, academic complex that Eisenhower warned against. Our government is so corrupt, there's so much money being made in the arms trade that we can't shut the spigot, even though it would be good for us, and we have willing partners.
What sort of changes might you expect or fear in the political landscape for America and the world if Romney becomes the next president?
Well, this sounds very cynical, but I mean, I'm not going to vote for Romney. But if Romney became president, I have no doubt that there would be much more pushback from the grassroots that are willing to give Obama a free ride on the things that he's doing that are equally as bad as what Bush and Cheney did. So I think Romney would articulate terrible policies that I would disagree with enormously. I mean, he's not for nuclear disarmament. He's got people like John Bolton that to me is like, you know, the death threat of foreign policy, advising him. But I think it'll get everybody stirred up, whereas with Obama we're giving him a free pass because we think he's the good guy.
At the level of other nations, do you see any prospect of non-superpower nations, the so-called middle power initiative nations, or other nations that have spoken with great force and conviction of the need for nuclear disarmament? Do you think that leadership may come from another country or other groups of countries?
I think that's a very good possibility, and we are pressing within the grassroots, our Abolition 2000 network, where we have you know, over 2,000 organizations in 95 countries. We're lobbying friendly countries. The Middle Powers Initiative that works at a track 2 level, speaking at a high level of government. We are lobbying non-nuclear countries and even nuclear countries like India, Pakistan, China. They're on record for wanting a nuclear weapons convention to ban the bomb, and they also have no first use policies. Their policy with regard to their nuclear arsenals is that they will never be the first to use them. Now, the U.S., Russia, France, and England say we're going to use them whenever we want, you know. Russia used to be no first use when it was the Soviet Union. Now they've moved over to this Western colonial position. You know, it's ours and we can do whatever we want with them. So I personally think there's a good chance that it could come out of India and Pakistan and China maybe. As the U.S. and NATO are expanding and provoking these countries, you know, they might gang up on us for peace. Of course, we're using this as an excuse. We're provoking them. Then China's rearming or Russia's rearming, and then these provocateurs in America go to the people and say we have to spend even more money for the military because China is building their forces in Russia. And nobody understands that we are the ones that are driving the arms race.
What about the reaction of some of the leading European countries? Norway, for example, has been very active in disarmament, and I think were the first to actually propose divesting from the companies that make the bomb and the delivery systems. BAE, Boeing, Northrop Grumman, Honeywell, Finmeccanica, Safran, United Technologies, and Gentech. All of them are on their list. Could that set a model or a...
Absolutely, and the ICANN campaign has a Don't Bank on the Bomb. It's icanw.org, and you can find out how to work on divestment in your own country. Occupy Wall Street, the Environmental Solidarity Working Group that I participate with, is going to do a Hiroshima Day demonstration at GE, which manufactures bombs and nuclear power. And I mean, nuclear power is like, it's the evil twin of the bomb.
I was going to ask about that because you have been both praised and condemned by some for having linked the two. You see them inextricably linked, nuclear weapons and nuclear power. and some people feel that that may be sacrificing the good for the perfect. Are they inevitably linked?
I don't see how you can separate them in a rational way. I mean, look what's happening with Iran. It's like we're going to war with Iran and threatening war with Iran because they're doing what they were legally entitled to do under the Non-Proliferation Treaty, which is enrich uranium to make it for their nuclear power plants. And of course, the enrichment machines, you just put it through a couple of more times and then you've got a bomb. So you can't draw a line and stop it. We're literally handing the technology over to people and then saying, no, no, don't you do it. Or saying to other countries it's okay. I mean, we never objected when Brazil enriched uranium, or Japan, or, you know, and these are non-nuclear weapon states, but they all have a bomb in the basement. I mean, I met with Mayor Akiba, who was the head of Mayors of Peace when he was a parliamentarian in Japan. And he said to me, this was like in '95, well, Japan has the bomb. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, we have all the material, we have the technology. I said, well, how long would it take you? He said, like 3 weeks. And Japan actually passed a law this week enlarging their nuclear power law to say that nuclear power gives them national security. So because they're concerned that there's such an opposition to nuclear power in Japan, that they might lose their ability to manufacture plutonium for bombs, which they've got their bomb in the basement too in Japan.
Do you see any pattern, finally let me ask, do you see any pattern emerging? You're so closely involved and have been so long so closely involved in the world movement against the bomb. Have you seen a change in the demographic support? Are there more women involved now? Are there more young people coming in or fewer? What are the patterns that you see emerging?
Well, you know, what I see is like a merging of all these causes. I mean, you can't just be against the bomb. There's like this whole Occupy Wall Street movement, and it started in Spain with the Indignados, and in Egypt and Tahrir Square. There's a lot of young people coming into the movement, and it's really a movement to maybe overthrow capitalism or strongly reform it. I mean, we've had 500 years of capitalism. It started with the Dutch West India Corporation. That was the first, you know, corporation where they didn't have personal liability for what they did. And you've had 500 years of the rape of the earth, of the air and the water and the soil, and our Mother Earth is stressed. We can't take it anymore. And I think everybody's coming together, so we're not getting these silos of issues like factory farming or nuclear weapons or the arms trade. People are coming together. You're going to see a big group coming out of this Rio Earth Summit just as disgusted with governments as we were at the MPT this last November. And I think there's a lot of young people involved in that.
Finally, can I ask you, is there anything you would like to say in a sort of summary or warning or hope or despair or what?
Well, my hope for everybody is to get involved. I mean, if you live in New York, this is a local show right now. Go down to Occupy Wall Street. There's an environmental working group. There's an anti-war working group. Check out Abolition 2000 on the web, www.abolition2000.org, and join this international network. Here, I've been so encouraged since Fukushima, this terrible disaster. We have a huge new cadre of Japanese Americans living in New York, and we formed a new group, Manhattan Project, and you can find it on the website. They name themselves the Manhattan Project. So there's a lot of new energy coming up, unfortunately, out of Fukushima, that people are so aware of the perils of nuclearism.
So terrible though it is, it has focused attention anew on some of the challenges of our age. Alice Slater, thank you very much for talking with us.
Thank you, Kev.
Parts of this interview will be featured in the City of University New York television Hiroshima Day special on August 6th and posted later on the World Opinion Forum YouTube channel.